Hi Sagittarius, welcome to your August 2020 Astro Alchemy transits. It's Rena here, and as a fellow Sagittarian, I'm really looking forward to August because we have the Sun in a fire sign for a good portion of the month in Leo, and this is going to be a transit in our ninth house, and that's the house that we rule. So there's a strong Sagittarian sub-influence with that as well. Not to mention, just being a fire sign. And then we have Mars in Aries all month long. And this is the fifth house, which is another fire house that Leo and the Sun rule. And Mars is in Aries there. So that's a house of pleasure. It's somebody who is actively pursuing pleasure, creativity, love, children, fun. The fifth house, being the house of pleasure, is about hobbies, sports, things that people do for amusement. And Mars is a driving force. So that's something that it's almost like being ambitious about it in a way, which can play into things if you're artistic. This is also the house of the business that you own, so you might be very, motivated to either start a business or improve the one that you have. On the 3rd, there's a full moon at 11 degrees of Aquarius. Aquarius is another sign that is friendly to Sag. It forms a sextile, and for Sag, this is the 3rd house. And the 3rd house is the house that Gemini rules, another air sign. And it really deals with communication, the media, internet, and any form of teaching and learning that has more of a practical nature to it. This is mundane knowledge. Full moons, but it is the mind. So a full moon in the 3rd house can bring about some sort of revelation you have that can improve your life in general. The 3rd house is also siblings, and I'm always a little bit fuzzy. I know it's cousins, but I think it's also aunts and uncles. It's your local area, so all of these areas could see some kind of change with them. An example would be if you have had problems with a sibling, and then you finally decide to call it quits, or you see them as they really are. Maybe they've always been able to deceive you. It can be like something with a neighbor, but maybe it's calling a truce with a neighbor and seeing them in a different light, but something that makes you forgive them. When you see somebody in a different light, it doesn't mean that you're always seeing something bad. It can actually be that you understand the person better. So there could be some developments. Also, if you're moving house, this could be you kind of going through in your local area, kind of saying goodbye to your favorite places, the things that made you feel like you had familiar surroundings, kind of doing your walk of goodbyes. And the very next day, we have Mercury going into Leo. Now, again, Leo is the 9th house. So until the 4th, and if you're listening in July, when I'm recording this, the Mercury is in Cancer. So that is the 8th house, and that is a house of deep penetrative analysis that has to do with human nature, psychology, and things to do with conspiracies, the occult, the hidden mysteries of life. And this can run the gamut. I personally have the Sun here. So one thing that I love is like alternative history, not the history we're taught in school, but that kind of mixes what the mainstream would call conspiracies with history. And so that might be something, Mercury can be research, but also going from the 8th to the 9th houses, this can be studying both the occult and, organized religions, things, the organized philosophical systems, which I associate with the 9th house. So when you have the 8th house, the water houses, the 4th, 8th, and 12th houses, but especially the 8th and 12th houses for the mysticism angle or metaphysical angle, we label that as spiritual. And think about it. When you talk about the spirit, there's almost like an emotional quality attached to it, whereas the 9th house is a mental house, just like the 3rd house, where the full moon is. On the 3rd, we have Mercury going into Leo, which is the opposite house, the 9th house. The 9th house is the house of academia or higher learning. But again, higher learning is all relative. If you're not I was going to say if you're a materialist, but I don't want to take it that far. But if you're somebody who tends to be more of an intellectual than believing in the spiritual, the 9th house may be more meaningful to you as it relates to universities. But for somebody who is has a philosophical bent, the 9th house can be the God house and can inform your life philosophy, which is the 9th house. The 9th house is also the house of long-distance travel. So Mercury can be anything that's like connected to paperwork, such as your passport. And this may be what you're really focusing on. Maybe you're focusing on researching about a place that you wish to visit that's far away. But certainly this could have something to do with enrollment at a university, teaching at a university, receiving a message about teaching at a university, yada, yada. On the 7th, Venus goes into Cancer. So Venus goes into that 8th house. So for the first week, you have Venus in the opposite sign of Sag, the 7th house. This is good for people who are in relationships. I'm talking about committed relationships, because it can make you a lot more romantic and harmonious with your partner. Now that Venus is going into the 8th house, this is bearing one's soul time, telling your secrets to a partner. So all of these things can bode well for people who are committed to a partner, because you're not willing to just skim the surface. I always kind of differentiate the 7th from the 8th houses, as the 7th house is the wedding ring, the marriage certificate, and the 8th house is the house of bearing one's soul to the partner. That's, the nitty-gritty as far as I'm concerned. People, now I'm not saying that everybody that most people are, their relationships are shallow, but sometimes people feel more comfortable playing a role than actually, understanding that being a partner is not just a status on Facebook. It means that you're accepting your partner not just for their good qualities, for the things that they feel ashamed about, the things that they do not like other people to see within themselves. When people are putting on a kind of like an act, they can, and they have this facade, they can act like they're invulnerable. They can act like they never get insecure. They've never had an embarrassing moment in their life. The people that are able to tell their partner, oh, you know, one of the most embarrassing things was when this happened or that happened. They want that person to see all facets of them. And that, to me, is what the 8th house represents, especially the psychological stuff. But having Mercury in this house can give that person, when Mercury is in the 8th house, I should say, which is just for the first few days of the month, but it gives the person a lot more insight into what makes other people tick, which is very good as well. Venus in the 8th house is soulmate energy. So that can also be, if you meet somebody during this time, that recognition at a deeper level, at a spiritual level, can be quite an exciting thing. And so that's cool. And what else do we got going on here? Uranus goes retrograde on the 15th. And I didn't write down that it's in Taurus. Oof. Okay, well, this is going to be the 6th house. Uranus has gone into Sagittarius 6th house. When did it do that? I think it was last year. It's been there for a while. I mean, it went back into Aries and then it went into Taurus again. Now, for some of you Sagittarius, you are kind of gravitating to working remotely. Uranus can rule technology. The 6th house is the house of work. So there can be this, and also Uranus is about freedom. And that certainly is something that Sagittarians crave like crazy. So you may be in this process of breaking free from a 9-to-5 grind if you found yourself there. I think a lot of Sagittarius would not choose that for themselves from the get-go, but in case it just so happened to work out that way, you may realize that you need to have more, I was going to say variety, but the way that I see Uranus in the 6th house is when I worked retail. And retail work as it is has many hours, a potential schedule. So like if stores open from 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock at night or 9 to 9 or what have you, we're talking about a 12-hour period. Nobody's working a 12-hour shift, so they're breaking it up. And I remember loving having like starting one day at 9, starting the next day at 12, starting the next day at 2. Not working Monday through Friday, having all these different permutations, in my schedule. And I had a coworker who happened to be a Scorpio, fixed sign, couldn't stand that, wanted to work the same hours every day. But Sagittarius are mutable signs, so we tend to like that type of variety and just feeling that sense of freedom that we don't have to be on this automatic kind of lifestyle where, it's just like wash, rinse, repeat. But Uranus takes it to the next level. Uranus retrograde doesn't make things more haywire, but it kind of highlights the fact that you really want to do this. And maybe you've already made steps in that direction. An example would be somebody who works like a 40-hour week, who typically would work in an office environment, which the 6th house can be, who decides to take advantage of flex time. So they're working, maybe half and half. And because of the shutdown situation, that may have been something that was just a done deal. And so a lot of people were forced into this. And I could see the Sagittarians in the crowd going, wow, I want to keep this going on. You get a taste of freedom and then you want more. So that can come really into your consciousness around the 15th as Uranus goes retrograde. Another possibility for jobs or even practices that you start to adopt in your own life, because this is also the house of health, could be related to energy healing. So some Sagittarians may get involved in getting trained for this. Reiki or shamanic healing are examples of this. And some Sages may be calling up a Reiki master and getting sessions with him or her. And I'm talking about for the next several months. This may be something that you've already undertaken in the past year or what have you. But during the whole transit of Uranus in Taurus, this can certainly be something that you participate in, depending on what is relevant in your life. On the 18th, we have a new moon at 26 degrees of Leo, so that fire new moon. At one of the later degrees of Leo. So in that 9th house, a new moon, expansion, some people, going to college, maybe not 18-year-olds. Perhaps you're 30 and or 40. And this is a totally new area for you. If you've been in the process of moving, this could be you moving to a foreign country. This may have something to do with work, or perhaps you're training for something connected to the 3rd house full moon. That could have been a course that you had that had some kind of certificate attached to it or what have you, and now you are going away. So maybe like learning English as a second language, and then you're going to take off for another country. On the 19th, Mercury goes into Virgo, so now we're starting to see these inner planets in Virgo. And yes, Virgo squares off Sag, but it's possible that you are like me and you have a lot of Earth in your personal planets. I have the moon in Virgo. You might have, it doesn't have to be Virgo. It could be in Taurus or Capricorn. And then that forms a trine to Virgo. So that will be harmonious in that regard. So we can't just look at the sun signs. But for Sag, Virgo is the 10th house of career. So that's not too shabby. You have Mercury going into Virgo on the 19th. So communicating with people in positions of authority. Perhaps you're, doing something with a new job, or you have to talk to corporate something. Because there's, this is kind of like a theme for this month. Jobs and career matters. And then on the 22nd, the sun goes into Virgo. So that puts you in that kind of persona of wanting to be professional, wanting to get into the career side of things, making you very aspirational in this regard. So it's interesting how this month for you, Sag, and this is true for you in every year, how it goes from the area of fun to the area of practicality. And, the 6th house, I'm sorry, what I'm thinking of, I'm sorry, the 9th to the 10th house. The area of what Leo represents with expansiveness in the 9th house, and philosophy. And there's like, when it's expanded, what it's doing is it's making all things possible. But in the 10th house, it's like you're focusing on your career especially. Now, I will say for that 5th house, which has to do with fun, that that's going to be in play all month, because Aries is racing through that house. And I guess it's retrograding in September. I'm going to have to check, but we don't need to talk about that now. The point is that in August, it's trining Sag, and that gives you a lot of gumption, if you will. So a lot of courage to express yourself, be who you are. And this is a very creative area, the fifth house. And if you are interested in love, you may even be the person who is going out and being the aggressor, if you will. But just wanting to have fun. August, in the northern hemisphere at least, is the last month of summer. So that might be a big reason why you're grabbing the gusto. Okay, that's what I have for you, Sag. I hope that you enjoyed this, resonated with it, can see how this may play out in your life. If you would like a personalized reading, which is going to be much more specific to you, because, if you're listening to this for the sun in Sag, what's your rising sign? They'll tell you what, about your natal chart. So it's a whole new ball of wax. Anyway, the link to my site is below. Have a great month. Take care. Bye.